The more you expose your life to people, the more they will find ways to make it worse. You've surely thought about disappearing and completely changing yourself before reappearing to shock people with the transformation that has happened to you. In the end, that's what any movie hero you watch does, right? If that's what you're thinking, then I'll tell you not to finish this video, because when you learn how to disappear and work in the dark without anyone knowing anything about you, believe me, you'll get addicted to it, and then you won't go back to reveal yourself to the world. Instead, the world will discover you in the end because you'll simply understand that the world's opinion doesn't matter. And my friend, I've been working in the dark for years without anyone knowing me, and this makes me suitable to tell you how to walk down the same path, a path of no return. In this video, I will tell you the story of David Goggins because I believe he is the right person to make today's video about. And throughout the story, I will give you 6 keys, and these keys will be for the door behind which you will find your new life, or to be more precise, your new self, my friend. I am Qasim, your guide to the truth, and let's begin. David wasn't always the person we know, because his life, which you could say he mostly lived, began in a small town in Indiana in the late 70s. You need to know that his life with his family was bad because even though his father was a skating rink manager by day, his job at night was to get drunk and hit David and his mother. In short, he was a bad person who liked to control his family with threats and violence. So, you can imagine how dysfunctional the family would be if the father's only concern was to get drunk and hit his family. As for David's mother, she was actually independent before marrying his father, but after she got married, she began living this miserable life almost daily, and of course, David and his younger sister were sharing this suffering with her. And besides the life David was living at home, he would go to school only for the situation to get even worse, because at that time, racism was still much more widespread than it is now, especially in Indiana where David lived. And to make things even worse, David was one of the few black children in the school, meaning I think you can imagine how he was treated by his classmates or at school in general. Starting from being beaten or even being called names that could destroy any child's personality. And I can't tell you what they actually used to say to him, but I expect you can imagine the amount of bullying that a black child would face in a racist school. Any child in his place would genuinely feel strange and that he didn't belong anywhere, a marginalized person with no self-confidence. So he remembered that David began to try to find any escape or outlet from the reality he was living in, and unfortunately, it's natural, my friend, that David didn't find anywhere to escape to. There was no way out of his bad life because he was still young and no one would listen to him and no one would get him out of these problems. And when David turned 8, a very big change happened in his life, my friend, because his mother decided to take him and his younger sister and run away from home, or to be more precise, run away from his father who was always abusing and hitting them. And even though this took courage from the mother, and even though it wasn't easy at all, imagine leaving your entire past life to start a new life from scratch. It wasn't easy at all, but nevertheless, David's mother managed to do it. She took her children and moved to another city and started a new life away from her husband without him knowing anything about them. But unfortunately, my friend, David didn't benefit much from this, because physical injuries are clear and they can heal, but psychological ones are very difficult to heal, because people get wounded, but the wound isn't visible like the physical wounds we see. So you could say David was still living in a state of continuous fear and suspicion of everyone. He genuinely believed that he couldn't get anywhere and that the whole world was conspiring against him, that the circumstances would remain against him like this. This is besides the fact that their lives became more difficult due to their financial situation, because at this time, his mother was the only one working, and David still hadn't finished with the problem of racism. On the contrary, he moved to a new, also racist school. So you can imagine what it means to be the new black kid in a racist school where everyone has to bully him, of course. And for all these reasons, year after year, David surrendered more to life. His self-confidence became worse than before. He had no ambition, no goal to strive for, and he lived only to exist, to eat and drink and wait for what tomorrow would bring. And I've seen many people like this, my friend, and it's possible that you too are in the same situation. And I want you to understand, my friend, it's not wrong to be in this situation, but it's wrong to plan to stay in it. So your first key, my friend, is to define your ambition and your goal, because you simply won't be able to achieve anything if you don't even know what it is. It's impossible to reach your destination if you haven't precisely defined what it is. And to define your goal, don't ask me, my friend, or anyone else, or search for it in books. Search for it within yourself. You, as a human, are a greedy creature, and you surely have a goal within you. There's surely something that when you look deep inside yourself, you feel that you want this thing, you want to achieve it. And it's possible that this thing is buried, my friend, but believe me, it's ultimately there. Now, what happened to him after years of family abuse and racism was his transition to adolescence. And even during this period, his life didn't improve. Rather, his situation was deteriorating more and more than before, because he had no plans or what he would do in the coming period, or what he would do after school. Should he go to university or should he work? He genuinely had no idea what he had to do. And besides that, he had no money, so his situation was genuinely difficult. So he began working temporary jobs, like cleaning in restaurants or even as a pesticide sprayer, or anything that could bring him a little money. And of course, my friend, these jobs weren't making the situation better because they were increasing his feeling of failure, especially since they were boring and their financial return was low, and they were consuming long hours of his life without him feeling that he was actually providing benefit to himself or to others. So David began to enter another path, a bad path, which is the path of obesity, because due to his continuous stress and bad psychological state, his only outlet was to go and eat, just eat as much as he could, and this thing actually started to increase and increase until finally his weight reached 136 kilograms. And for you to understand how bad the situation is, my friend, imagine yourself in David's place. Your psychological state is very bad, your financial situation is very bad, you have no future, you don't know what you want to do, so you like to eat in very large quantities to relieve yourself a little. You feel like you're doing something, and then when you look in the mirror, you find yourself becoming obese to a bad degree, your appearance is not good, and for this reason, your psychological state gets worse. So you give up. But the situation kept getting worse, and it was as if you were literally sinking in quicksand. The more you tried to move to get out of it, the more you would sink deeper. So, simply, David became more isolated from the world. He had no friends and almost wasn't even trying to make friends because his psychological and physical state always prevented him and made him feel that he was less than worthy of interacting with any other person in any possible relationship. And for this reason, I will give you your second key, my friend. Don't care about anyone's opinion. Your opinion is what matters. Look, my friend, maybe the issue has become clear to you, but maybe it's still a little unclear. But people will always talk and will always try to judge you. If you were rich, they would talk about you, and if you were poor, they would talk about you. If you were fat, they would talk about you, or even muscular. If you were religious or even a filthy person, they would also talk about you, because people will always find a way to talk about you, to judge you in some way. Now, what happened, my friend, is that because of all these things I told you about, David actually started thinking about ending his life, simply putting an end to it, because it genuinely had no value in his eyes. It was just living day after day in greater suffering. But what happened during this period was a very small event, yet it would radically change his life.